Hello and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center video podcast. Today our guest is Andrej Novak. He is expert in security and foreign politics, and he is a founder of European Idealists movement in Germany. Welcome, Andrej.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Look, like your movement is being called European Idealists, and we will definitely talk about what does it mean. But first, let us talk about what is going on in Germany, in German politics. We know that the so-called traffic light coalition, the coalition of the Social Democrats, the Liberals, and the Greens, constantly losing its popular support. What are reasons for that?
Well, first of all, the coalition is quite heterogeneous. They have, parties from the left of center, like the Greens and the Social Democrats, as well as a party of the right of center, the Liberal Party, FDP. And so in terms of economics and social policy, they have quite different ideas, and thus they cancel each other out, and they cannot move along some big reform projects that they campaigned on. So this is difficult, and actually in 2017, Christian Lindner, leader of the FDP, actually rejected creating a Jamaica coalition with conservatives and the Greens, and that would probably have been a more homogeneous coalition. But yes, he didn't see his party doing well in such a constellation. So this time around, they did form a coalition for the first time, a traffic light coalition, and the heterogeneity is showing in different situations. Also, we do have quite a media campaign. Second point is that a lot of media are very critical of the coalition. Conservative media, also left and right-wing extremist and populist media, are targeting this coalition, and so they are up against quite a bit of resistance. Conservatives are very unhappy being in opposition after so many years, and they want to come back as soon as possible. And they do have media outlets which are closer to them, quite a few, and very influential ones as well. So this is quite a struggle for the traffic light coalition to get through with a positive message, and every mistake is magnified basically by this media.
Yeah, but on another side, of course, when it's said that in Germany, the German economy suffers from the decline, and it is not something new. It is a problem of modernization of the German economy, which existed since years. But on the field of the foreign politics, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has proclaimed Zeitenwende, the epochal change, 2 years ago, promising Germany to be a new leader of Europe and fight for freedom and democracy, supporting Ukraine. And now we see that the government, of course, is doing much more than we could have expected 2 years ago. But still, most of the population expect much more of support for Ukraine. Just think about the Taurus missiles. What is going wrong here? Why is the stubbornness of Olaf Scholz stops the whole promises he made by himself?
Well, on the one hand, it's never too late to get on the right course and start moving in the right direction at the right speed. So by no means is what I'm going to say supposed to mean that the coalition should be discouraged from taking more energetic steps to support Ukraine, and also for the Chancellor to finally say that he wants Ukraine to see victory and to free all its territory. But I do in fact believe that the golden opportunity of the first year of the full-scale war, of the war of Russian aggression against Ukraine, which has been going on since 2014, that this golden opportunity of the first year was largely missed. It took a long time for the debate on heavy weapons to even pick up, and then months were lost each time to decide on some weapon system, such as the Leopard tanks and others, Gepard air defense systems, and so on. So basically, this means that and finally even Taurus, which was discussed for months, and then the Chancellor basically nixed it and said we're not going to deliver for the time being. And this is, of course, something which Ukrainians feel directly on the battlefield, feel directly in their security situation. And the reasons, I think, are manifold, not least of which is the long-standing German establishment foreign policy position of change through trade or rapprochement with Russia, which was authored originally in the 60s by Egon Bahr, and which has a lot of friends in the mainstream government parties, especially in the Social Democrats. And while in for example, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party, the voices that you could call Putin-verstehers have been fairly muted and hardly noticeable anymore. Also in the Greens, they have been much quieter since the full-scale invasion. In the SPD, there's still quite a factor and quite a few influential figures. It is well known that the SPD was unable to get rid of even Chancellor Schröder, who's just a lobbyist for Putin, essentially. Disgrace for a former chancellor, actually, and other figures have made their careers on this policy. And Olaf Scholz was close to those figures, and actually there's quite, I would say, still a swamp of a Russia connection in Germany, which the draining of that swamp hasn't even started in earnest, I would say. So this is a big problem, and also, of course, you have this whole Yuri Bezmenov called it ideological subversion. You have hybrid war tactics, influence operations, all kinds of media bots and trolls working the social media very masterfully to influence opinion in Germany, Europe, and other liberal democracies. So,
but that is exactly the point which I wanted to address in our conversation. You have been once a member of the Green Party, and I was also a member of the Green Party. And we remember how the Greens have been seen as a motor of very clear, very value-based, and very practical approach towards Russia. Like, understand Russia, understand what Vladimir Putin wants. He wants world dominance. He doesn't respect international law. So we need to put him to show him the limits of his expansion, to demonstrate him that we may fight back and we must support our neighbors. And after 2 years, almost 2 years of this war, we still see that the Greens, despite being pro-Ukrainian, cannot really challenge Olaf Scholz and tell him, look, either you deliver Ukraine everything Ukraine needs, or we just leave the coalition. What has happened to the Greens?
Well, this reputation of the Greens of getting Russia, of being critical of the Kremlin, it has a long history, and it's going back to even the dissidents of the GDR who were in touch with Soviet dissidents and Eastern European dissidents, and as many of you know, the Alliance 90. A GDR party formed after the Berlin Wall fell. It fused with the Greens in 1990 and became one party. So we have this in our DNA. We had the Green Party, still saying we after 16 years in the Greens, only left in March, but it's still in the Green DNA to have this inheritance of contacts with dissidents. Also, active anti-nuclear energy activists like Rebecca Harms built connections with Ukraine after the Chernobyl disaster, and started to understand the Ukrainian perspective better throughout these years of contacts. And then you had Marie-Louise Beck and Werner Schulz and other prominent members of parliament who were in the regional.
Viola von Kramon,
yeah,
like,
in the region a lot.
A lot of the Greens who understand Ukraine, but you don't see them on the level of those who can challenge Olaf Scholz, maybe except of Robert Habeck.
Yes, indeed. I think one of the issues right now is that, according to the polls, if you look at the polls, all of the coalition parties would lose if there were new elections, and actually the SPD and the FDP much more than the Greens. So the Greens are relatively strong still, considering all the the uphill struggle they have with the media. But on the other hand, none of them is currently standing to gain from new elections. And who is to gain or would be to gain stands to gain is the, of course, the right-wing populist party, right-wing extremist party, AfD, and also the apparently new party which is coming up by Sarah Wagenknecht, left-wing populist party. Both of these populist parties are close to the Kremlin and are quite consistent in representing Russian interests. So so the question is, what kind of a parliament would the next elections create, and would it really be possible to strengthen the pro-Ukrainian stance? On the other hand, it has happened, of course, that without elections, a new coalition is built just by parties switching allegiance. Recently, there have been talks between Social Democrats and the Conservatives, but a lot of friends of Ukraine are hoping perhaps to get a stronger position if the Conservatives form a coalition with the Greens. However, I don't think this is likely to happen, and the Conservatives also have not been as strong with a pro-Ukrainian position from the very beginning, and only properly changed their positions after the full-scale invasion. But there have also been some uncomfortable, unpleasant tones, even from the leader Merz towards Ukrainians. So after that, I don't think this is a sure thing.
Now, you mean like Friedrich Merz, who is a leader of Christian
Exactly.
Democrats, conservative opposition, the strongest oppositional party in the German parliament. Before we go further, don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe to this channel. If you have your ideas, write a comment under this video. And we are talking to Andrej Novak, who is a political expert, an expert in particular in foreign and security policy, and a founder of European Idealists movement in Germany. You have mentioned already, Andrej, that we have in Germany the decline of popularity of at least two coalitional parties, the Liberals and the Social Democrats, and we have the rise of right and left-wing populists. If I'm not mistaken, the far-right populist party, AfD, has now about 23-25% of popular vote, and the newly founded left populist party led by leftist politician Sarah Wagenknecht, who is very pro-Russian in her position. She has, according to different polls, like 8 up to 12%. It's still very volatile. But what is going on with the German political landscape? Like, we have a strong influence of populists. We have decline of popularity of democratic parties. Do the Germans look for something new, or are they just like tired of the same faces? What is going on? What do people want?
Well, I think that we've had this trend in Europe of strong populist movements and parties for a decade now, probably, and since the Euro crisis and financial crisis, this has been going on, and there has been in parties like France, the UK, Italy, and so on, very strong election results by populist parties. But in Germany, we've escaped relatively unscathed, so to speak, by this trend, and we haven't had such strong showings in the elections. And when the AfD was resurgent, let's say during the refugee crisis 2015-2016, it actually lost popular support in the years after that, and many predicted that the AfD would rise and rise, and in fact it was the Greens that rose after that, so the story was didn't work out as expected, but now there seems to be a very strong dynamic on the right side, with of course a party that is considered by even the German authorities now in several federal states to be a right-wing extremist, and against the targeted against the constitution. Not yet the whole party as such, but the tendency is there to become ever more right-wing extremists, and also the left-wing populists of Wagenknecht, they are set to grab quite a piece of the electoral pie, so to speak. And I think this trend is not just going to pass without any major new factors coming in terms of policy, in terms of new faces, in terms of alternative solutions. And the conundrum for the upcoming elections is that right now, all mainstream parties, which are not extremists or populists, they have been entangled in the governments of the last years, and people are disappointed. Sometimes it's fair to blame the current government, sometimes not, because they inherited a lot of problems or they came from external sources. But we do have, war in Europe, war in the Middle East. We have inflation, the cost of living crisis. We have, a high interest. The construction sector is suffering. Experts are suffering, and so this creates uncertainty, and German angst is activated. And people look elsewhere for solutions, and I think it's not a good situation that if they want to tell the government and also the previous government, the mainstream establishment parties, that they're unhappy, that currently they only can vote for populists or extremists. So this is not a good situation, and not counting some niche parties, of course.
We have the situation when you have a rise of populist parties like left and right wing. You have decline of popularity of democratic parties out of understandable reasons. Some of them are natural, some of them are the consequences of mistakes. But anyway, like, you need to demonstrate that you can lead, and the number of the problems will just arise. Like, we have flares everywhere in Europe. Like, we have flares on the Balkans. We have a full-scale war between Israel and Hamas. God knows if we will have a war between China and Taiwan. What should the government, what should the political parties do to demonstrate the people, look, we can provide you with sustainable solutions. We know what to do, and we are doing something what is effective, and we can explain you why this should be done and why certain decisions have been taken. What is the solution?
Well, I think that this, technocratic administering and ruling according to opinion polls, which has worked for a long time for Merkel and other politicians, and partially for Scholz, I think this is no longer working. It's no longer adequate to address the existential crisis that we are seeing in the areas of security, in the areas of climate, the environment, and in the area of extreme social inequality. And of course, also the economy and the question of precariousness of the economic situation of many citizens, or at least fear of losing ground. So this fuels the populist rise, and this drives voters to support extremists, which a few years ago they wouldn't have thought about. And I believe that that proper leadership is needed, and this leadership needs to be based on values and expertise. And I see a great lack of it. And actually, I was politicized in 1991 when the war in Croatia happened. Actually, the hometown of my mother, Vukovar, was ethnically cleansed in the fall of 1991 after almost 3 months siege. And this drove me to look for answers. Why is this happening? Why is no one stopping it? And of course, in the course of the 90s, I formulated my value basis and my outlook, and this has been consistent since, and hasn't changed very much. So in terms of human rights, and also analyzing the international situation, and understanding that pacifism invites aggressors, and you do have to strike back against aggression. You do have to create a deterrent in order to prevent conflicts from escalating into wars. And I think even the lessons of the wars of the 90s have not been learned. And I think that a lot of our politicians, and even those we have in leadership positions now, they didn't actually join politics in order to solve this level of issues and problems, and this major crises. And they are not, they're not up to the tasks, unfortunately. And I believe that a lot of them are not very honest with voters. They play political games, or they are opportunistically looking what is en vogue this week, what do voters want a month from now. But there's a lack of a strategy and a vision, and people.
But that is exactly what your movement, which you have founded, the European Idealists, demand. I read through the program of your movement, and one can read there that you demand a technocratic government, like not a government from the professional politicians. Like when the parties which form the coalition government, they say, okay, like you get the interior ministry, I get the foreign ministry, and the third party gets Ministry of Agriculture and something more. And they just shuffle and reshuffle their party bureaucrats. And you demand an expert government. But does it comply to what Germany knows from the 60 years of the history of Democratic Federal Republic of Germany?
Well, there have been cases of ministers, for example, who were not members of a party, and we have seen it in other countries recently, in Bulgaria and Austria, that expert governments were formed after major crises and scandals, made the governments formed by politicians no longer viable, at least for a certain time. And so, in terms of law and constitution, there's no issue with just appointing non-party experts who do not have to be members of the parliament at all. But let me just get back quickly also to the loss of confidence in the system. Liberal democracy is the best system that we've come up with as humankind, but it does have its flaws, and in its current form, it does have its flaws, and it also has not changed very much in the last more than 200 years, and I think that even back in the ancient times of ancient Greece and Rome, the thinkers were wondering, how can we prevent tyranny? And I think with democratic backsliding and with autocracies aggressively trying to expand, not just to stop democracy from expanding, but to expand themselves, often in a violent fashion, I think we have to ask this question again, and if our liberal democracy is up to this task. And with my 32 years of experience, I found this not to be the case, and I believe that what we have to do is to not only apply some thoughts of good old Plato, but combine them with thoughts by Sigmund Freud and modern psychology and neuroscience, and say that we just have to be more selective in terms of who is going to be good politicians, and therefore we call ourselves European Idealists, because as idealists we want to serve the public good, the common good, and that is our main motivation for being engaged in politics. And this is the main condition to actually have the drive to get the best outcome for citizens, and not be primarily out for oneself. And also, we do have measures in place to select party members in 3 steps to join the future party, and to try and single out and not admit to the party psychopaths and sociopaths, and other people who might be let's put it mildly, not very constructive in party life and in political life, and perhaps even dangerous. And we want to do this at the government level as well. And we want to have candidates for government office go through 2 psychological evaluations and a brain scan in order to primarily try to filter out psychopaths and sociopaths. And
so you are already elaborating of how would you reform the political system, that like going into very technical details, like tests, like psychological tests, or like this hard way to the membership into the party. Isn't it way too fast or way too radical?
Well, I think that I think that it's important for us to get these new concepts and ideas into the discourse. And our idea is to introduce them into the discourse, to then change this discourse, move it closer to our position, and we'll see what happens. And hopefully, there will be a lot of public debate about it, and hopefully we'll be able to have an impact, and we can show the problems. And I think it's fairly obvious. I mean, ESA or NASA, they wouldn't send astronauts to space without properly checking them for psychological disorders and for dangerous character traits. But our government ministers, chancellors, and so on, they don't go through this kind of checks. And I believe that, if we can set a trend, and which would hopefully spread internationally, of saying that if you are a psychopath or a sociopath, don't even try to get into government. I think we'd solve a lot of the in the long run, solve a lot of the issues in terms of violence, war, democratic backsliding, tyranny, and so on, because a lot of the tyrants that we are seeing today and the aggressors, I think it would fall into this category.
Well, in addition to the checks of if a person is corrupt or has some nasty relations which he or she cannot explain to foreign tyrannies, they will need to undergo a medical test, which will maybe give too much power to the doctors. But once again, it's a technical question, and we cannot discuss it and elaborate it in details now. But regarding your political demands, which one can read in your movement, you demand, in addition to this technocratic government, you demand massive increase on security spendings, not even 2%, but if I'm not mistaken, 5%. And you demand a very green approach to climate topics, and a very so to say social welfare approach to distribution of the wealth. How does it combine with each other? These demands seem to be from pretty different political areas.
Well, I would say our movement and future party, we are radical centrists, and we perhaps define this differently. As journalists and commentators may call us something else, but our position is in the radical center, meaning that we are thinking from scratch. We are daring to present new solutions to old problems. and at the same time we're focusing on this golden mean, this old idea actually from antiquity, that what we need is a strong center and a large middle class, and give people the chance to get there. But our ideology is humanism, and following Hobbes, we say that without security, people will not care about other issues. If you're asking people in Ukraine or Israel now, they don't worry about climate change. They're looking for security. So therefore, security is the first dimension of our priorities. And we are advocating 5% security expenditure, massive increase, common European procurement, and planning to be able to project power also in our neighborhood, in the Mediterranean, North Africa, because only this way can we be anywhere near secure for the future and for the threats which are already there and which are rising and facing us in the future. So we're absolutely hawkish.
This would also help to prevent the rise of radicals in our own country. Because, like, if we would not have this long, almost 2 years long, full-scale war in Ukraine, if we could have stopped it immediately by a decisive response and bring Vladimir Putin to reason, then we wouldn't have these political and economical crisis in our own country.
Well, indeed,
right?
I think that deterrence is always the best way. Be ready for war if you want peace, is the old saying, "Si vis pacem para bellum." And that's absolutely true. And we dropped the ball on this, especially in Germany. We were happy and secure and complacent with our U.S. security umbrella and NATO. And I think we just, for the most part, our political leadership, with a few notable exceptions, they have not been, they don't have a proper understanding of the security policy and dimension, not to mention, of course, the ignorance about Eastern Europe, Russia, and, the hybrid threat, the long-term ideological subversion strategy, and other issues which, you and I, we've been seeing this for many years. The nature of the Putin regime hasn't been a secret to me for over 20 years. And, since 2010 or so, I've been calling it the greatest threat to global security. But this hasn't, a lot of people still don't understand this issue. So we do need to focus on the security. And I think in terms of climate, I haven't changed. I've said it before. I've been consistent for 20, 30 years in my views. So I've been green for 16 years, and I still stand for renewable energy, for climate, protection measures. And in that sense, we'll have as strong a position as the Greens. I think, having a party that does not, honestly and seriously invest in protecting the climate is irresponsible these days. It's irresponsible towards future generations and even those people living today, especially the younger generation. Besides this, we focus on universalism. We don't want to create a fair and good world just for Germans or Europeans. We are trying to live universalism of human rights, which is a tough thing to do, but it is our guiding principle. And we also believe that the European Union is one of the best things that Europeans came up with, and we have to continue with European integration, but do it smartly and not let ourselves be fooled by wannabe autocrats trying to get in the union or fooling with us within the union. I think who I'm alluding to. And also, I've said it back in my speech in 2014 in mid-February when Maidan was still going on. Ukraine is Europe, and an attack on Ukraine is an attack on Europe, and defending Ukraine is defending Europe. And I mean this, and we're going to take this seriously.
So the creation of a party should stay immediately in the plans
Yes,
for the
indeed. We
near
are
future.
working on this, and we are hoping that in early, or currently looking towards early 2024 to actually found this party. And we, fingers crossed, we are hoping and planning to participate in this year's next year's European elections.
Wow, that are really massive plans and very courageous plans. I hope you will be able to change the situation for good, at least with your example, and with calling the things by name, like the security threats or the climate threats or threats of economic disbalance, you name it. Thank you so much. It was Andrej Novak. He is a political and security expert focused on countries of Central and Eastern Europe and the Balkans. And he is a founder of the European Idealists movement in Germany, which he plans to transform into a political party which could maybe bring Germany and Europe for a better way to govern our
Thank you for having
countries.
me
Thank you so
once
much,
again.
Andrej.